It's around 7 a.m. on April 19, 1968, in Buenos Aires' bustling Boedo neighborhood. Staff at the local Banco Nación, a pretty colonnaded building on one of the barrio's main intersections, are ready in the branch for business. But this will be no ordinary day. Approaching the bank is a group of 4 young men, 2 in impeccable grey suits, 2 in workers' overalls. They gather beside a door. Its lock has been broken in advance. Then 3 of the men slip inside, while the 4th stays on the street as a lookout. The 2 overall men announce they're on site to fix some faulty typewriters, but their suited pal pulls out a submachine gun and points it at the staff. He motions them down a stairway into the bank's basement and commands the pair in the overalls, in perfectly accented French, to get to work. Which they do, working their way slowly into the bank's vault by cracking 3 separate codes. Several hours later, the 3 men emerge with 63 million pesos, almost $2 million in today's money. Nobody touches the cashiers, nobody raises their voice, and nobody gets hurt. The police are bamboozled. It's the biggest robbery in Argentine history, but it's also the slickest, cleanest heist they've ever seen. If witnesses heard the robbers say anything, which wasn't a lot, it was in French. Surely, the cops think, the gang had an insider. A couple days later, that theory gains traction when one of the bank's watchmen takes his own life. It was he, cops believe, who tipped the robbers off to that broken lock. Authorities have also noticed how much the Banco Nación heist resembles a rash of recent break-ins across Europe, carried out to finance the activities of something called the Secret Army Organization, or OAS. French far-right paramilitaries most famous for their failed attempt to assassinate President Charles de Gaulle. Among the OAS's numbers are a handful of French Corsican mobsters, men who collaborated with the Gestapo during the war, then grown wildly rich smuggling heroin from Asia to the United States via the port city of Marseille. This so-called French connection, soon to be immortalized in a Hollywood movie of the same name, has been tracked by cops and Nazi hunters to the extent that, by the time of the 1968 heist, many of them are living in Buenos Aires, under false names, not far from German war criminals the Argentine state had welcomed after 1945. The OAS even have their own meeting spot. It's a fancy restaurant, right in the middle of the city, French of course, and not altogether coincidentally, a 10-minute car ride from the Banco Nación. A week after the robbery, cops make 2 arrests. One is a Corsican mafioso known for drugs and weapon smuggling throughout Latin America. The other is a French narco believed by some, yes, this is true, to have shot JFK from the grassy knoll. But the third man, the most notorious of them all, he gets away. His name is Auguste Ricord, a tall 57-year-old French Corsican with a slender frame and white bushy sideburns that go all the way down to his neck. He's a pimp, a drug trafficker, and a fugitive war criminal. And he's got so many of Buenos Aires' cops in his pocket that they fear his arrest will implicate them. So the corrupt cops reach out to Ricord. Leave Argentina now, they tell him. We can't protect you anymore. Ricord knows right away where he's got to go. The place he'll be safest, where an iron-fisted half-German has kept his people in a vice-like grip for decades, dispatching enemies to torture chambers and vast rural concentration camps. A country that has welcomed so many Nazis and narcos that is considered by some to be the most lawless place on the planet. Oh, and also a place where, for the past year, Auguste Ricord has been running a pizza restaurant. A front, of course, in case he needed to cut his time in Argentina short with the Frenchest of French exits. That moment is now, and Ricord is headed, of course, for neighbouring Paraguay. But the drama is only just beginning, and before long, the fallout from the Banco Nación bust will spill into an episode that leaves Ricord's new home on the brink of disaster and a showdown with Uncle Sam. Welcome to the Underworld Podcast. welcome to the weekly podcast that dives into the weird and the weirder of global organised crime. I am Sean Williams, a freelance writer and reporter based in Buenos Aires, and I am joined today by my co-host Danny Gold, fellow media sufferer in New York City. We are not two guys sitting in their basements reading Wikipedia. This is actually on the second floor of a building, which is pretty impressive. We have been out in the field following this stuff for a long time, a bit too long, actually. I wrote this episode, in fact, from Asuncion, Paraguay, where I was for almost a week, hunting stories, digging through the National Archives.
Yeah, I don't have a basement, so that's really it's not possible for me in my New York City apartment.
Actually, yeah.
But what else did you get up to over there in South America, away from the family and the kids, Sean Williams? A little flashback to the old Berlin days?
No. It was mostly watching football matches and sitting in archives reading stuff about German people in Paraguay. And yeah, they're exactly who you'd expect them to be. Yeah, it's a pretty weird place. Asuncion is like one of the weirdest places I've ever been. It's interesting, but I wouldn't put it top of my holiday list in case you're thinking about backpacking around Latin America anytime soon. Yeah, I had fittingly a very interesting conversation with an American Holocaust denier while there as well.
Yeah, I mean those guys are a dime a dozen these days, so it'd be rare if you didn't run into one.
Yeah, he was friends with a German guy in a strange little bar. Anyway, I don't need to go into that. It was an annoying conversation, let's say. Anyway. A quick reminder, first up, to subscribe wherever you listen to this show and follow us on all the socials, Insta, Facebook, TikTok. Are there others? I'm too old these days. And reach out, theunderworldpodcast@gmail.com. Any more?
Yeah, patreon.com/underworldpodcast for bonuses and to support us, or sign up on pod.com for t-shirts, merch, all other things. And if you want to advertise with us.
Yeah, do it. Okay, let's get into this one. This episode should be pretty clear from the cold open you just heard. It is absolutely bananas. The country itself is bananas. We've got Nazi collaborators, bank robbing gangs, paramilitaries trying to off Charles de Gaulle, the North Korea of Latin America. That's my words, not anyone else's, of course. And heaps of high-grade heroin. It is the story of how a dictator and a drug kingpin hit it off. But it's also about the foundation of drug routes that are still alive and kicking today, causing political incidents all the way up to today, in fact. So let's begin with what the French Connection is. It's something that we've mentioned a bunch on the show before, but we've never really kind of dug all the way into it. You might know it from this old doozy.
The French Connection, a millionaire exporter with a record too clean to be true, and Doyle knows it. But he's been known to make mistakes.
Your hunches have backfired before, Doyle.
This time, he can't afford to be wrong.
Hey!
Let me bust, Bob! I want to bust!
I know the deal hasn't gone down. I know it hasn't. I can feel it. I'm dead certain.
Last time you're dead certain, we went with a dead cop.
Such a great movie, maybe the best chase scene of all time. That film won 5 Oscars in 1972 and is based, in part, on the life of Auguste Ricord. That life begins in 1911 in the city of Marseille, one of the biggest ports in Europe and the dominant one on the Mediterranean Sea. Ricord sets out on his life of crime at the tender age of 16, copping a conviction for extortion, and then he's convicted at least 4 more times for armed robbery, receiving stolen goods, and illegal possession of a firearm. Sometime after that, Ricord moves to Paris, where he works as a pimp. In 1940, the German army just takes 6 weeks to sweep aside its French counterparts, of course, and it establishes a Nazi puppet state in southern France, which includes Marseille, and is named for its adopted capital, the small town of Vichy. Now, Ricord, he doesn't much mind the Nazis. In fact, he likes them quite a lot. So in 1941, when a friend introduces him to the head of the French Gestapo, Henri Lafont, Lafont sees potential in Ricord as this venal, opportunistic thug, and he brings him into Paris's sleazy underbelly, running brothels and cabarets, selling women or black market goods, or forming posses to go around town smashing up Jewish properties. In 1942, cops arrest Ricord after a burglary, but the Gestapo spring him from jail. The following year, Ricord steals several $100,000 from a village around an hour outside Paris. Cops know he did this one too, but they'll never get their hands on him. For one, Ricord's beloved Nazis have lost the war, and the leading architects of the Holocaust are either being hunted down or put on trial.
Wait, hold on. You just went from like 1942, 43 to post-World War II. What did we just miss?
Yeah, quite a lot. I guess this is towards the tail end of the occupation, and so he's running around being a pimp and a kind of like all-round horrible guy. But in 1945, when the Germans lose the war, he's kind of lost his best protection, and he joins the growing list of incredibly bad people who are beginning to think about getting out of Europe as the Allies are sweeping across the continent via the so-called rat lines, right? So that's escaping via boat to fascist-friendly South American nations, oftentimes on false passports created by the Catholic Church, on occasion with the explicit backing of the Vatican itself. I'm saying this in a Buenos Aires studio, so I don't know what the guy can... It's a pretty shameful episode in the church's history, but I'm sure they're going to clean up their act after this. I can't imagine they're going to, get implicated in widespread pedophilia and sexual abuse after all this happens. Anyway, yeah, there you go. Some of the most notorious war criminals do make it across the Atlantic on these rat lines. Adolf Eichmann, Josef Mengele, Klaus Barbie, who we've done a two-parter on, Ante Pavlich. Most of them end up in Buenos Aires, where I am currently. In fact, a ton of them move into homes in the same barrio, which is an upscale, leafy suburb named Florida, where many of their neighbors are actually Jewish. There are some wild accounts of life in BA from this time where you'd have folks who escaped the Holocaust living just a couple of blocks down from the folks who masterminded it.
You're really becoming the world's foremost podcaster on the Nazi to South America gangster pipeline, you know?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of half hoping that someone's going to pay me to make a book just by listening to my podcast and not by me having to write a sample chapter, which seems incredibly boring. But
these are sample chapters, folks. These are sample chapters.
Exactly. Remember Auguste Ricord's Gestapo pal Henri Lafont from those Paris days? Well, he's captured and executed by a firing squad just before the end of the war. So that's a happy story. But Ricord, he gets out. Some say he gets on a boat in Spain, others say Italy. But according to him, he arrives in BA in 1947 with a false passport in the name of Lucien Dargels. There are other rumors that he's taken a ton of jewelry and other treasure looted from French Jews. So, yeah, yet more evidence that this is a very lovely guy that we're talking about right now. Ricord actually has a death sentence hanging over him by this point for colluding with the Nazis, plus a 20-year sentence for that village robbery done back in 1943. But the French can't get to him, because the Argentine government of Juan Perón rejects all of France's extradition requests, as he does with a load of other bad guys. And so Auguste Ricord, gangster, extortionist, pimp and convicted war criminal, starts his second life in the Western Hemisphere. So now we're into 1947. Auguste Ricord is in Buenos Aires, and the rat lines have spat a bunch of Nazis and narcos all over Latin America. You've got Klaus Barbie setting up as a drug trafficking paramilitary in Bolivia, Nazi counterfeiter Friedrich Schwendt laundering cartel cash in Lima. I'll be going there next week to do a bit more on that. Paul Schaefer setting up Colonia Dignidad in Chile. I remember watching that documentary on Netflix. It's really good, worth a watch. But Buenos Aires is really the ground zero for these guys. It's BA's ports where most of them rock up after the war. And like I mentioned, most of them live in fancy homes in this suburb of Florida. By this time, the French Connection is a well-established route for heroin. It had begun back in the 1930s when two Corsican gangsters were looking for a way to hook up the opium producers of Turkey and Lebanon with the booming consumer market in the US. They'd ship morphine base into Marseille, they'd get French chemists to turn it into smack, and then they'd smuggle it back through the port of Marseille and out across the Atlantic.
I think we went into some serious detail about this in our Turkish heroin kingpin episodes, right? Or the Afghan heroin episodes. Yeah. But I can't remember anything too directly because my brain is riddled with holes.
Yeah, that feels like my life from day to day at the moment. Anyway, here is some info about the French Connection from none other than the DEA. Quote, Marseille is one of the busiest ports in the Mediterranean, making it the perfect place to smuggle morphine base from the Middle East and Asia in and heroin out. Morphine base was extracted from opium from Turkish poppy fields. Turkish farmers were licensed to grow opium poppies for sale to legal drug companies, but many sold their excess to the underworld market. After arriving in France, it was refined into heroin in concealed laboratories. These labs were crude but highly portable facilities that could be set up in only a few rooms of a small villa. The heroin was then cleverly hidden in false bottom suitcases, ships' cargo holds, or inside the panels of large American cars and dispatched to the illegal US market.
Yeah, that does it. That does the job right there.
Yeah,
but you should go back and listen to those episodes. They're pretty deep on the subject.
Yeah, listen to them.
Fantastic, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, they are. They're the best we've ever done. Authorities first discover these Marseille heroin labs in 1937, but they don't exactly shut the French Connection down. For one, French officials appreciate the fact that the Corsican Union, as it is officially known, had worked closely with the French resistance during the war, murdering Nazis and helping the underground ship weapons and other supplies through Marseille.
Wait, that's a timeline thing again, right? You're saying they discovered them in 37, but don't shut them down because they later helped the French resistance take out Nazis. Like, why didn't they shut? I guess in 37, they probably had bigger problems in like 37 than a couple of heroin labs. I think we throwing that out there. Maybe
I think we're going to learn like they're really, really canny at getting in with the people in power, and they were doing that at the start, which is the theory as to why they weren't shut down. And then when the war started, especially in southern France, they were like, okay, well, we're going to do a quid pro quo now, and we're going to keep on shipping our stuff, but we can help you against the Germans, which of course the French do a really great job of doing. When the war ends, Paris then uses these Corsican mafiosi to break strikes by trade unionists, going so far as to assassinate union leaders. They've got French cops, the mayor of Marseille, and even, it's rumoured, President Charles de Gaulle on their side. And that's just on their home turf. Post-war, the French Connection establishes close ties with opium-producing French colonies in Indochina, that's Vietnam, Laos. They're founding charter airlines to get product from the poppy fields of central Laos to Saigon, something which will later be known, unimpeachably, as Air Opium. They also have plenty of friends in America. Here's Owen Grillo in a great crash-out media piece he did from Marseille last year. Quote, "The CIA used the mobsters to break communist strikes in the fragile years after World War II, when it was scared Europe would turn red. It thus bolstered the same network of gangsters and their political protectors that would help create the American smack habit." CIA official Tom Braden admitted the links to the Marseille underworld in a strikingly candid 1967 editorial entitled, "I'm glad the CIA is immoral." Immoral is in inverted commas, but yeah, it's pretty a great title. Braden was hitting back against criticism in the era, and he described how the agency was effective in fighting communism, funneling money to break up a dock strike in Marseille in 1950. He even identifies the exact paperwork from one payment of $15,000 that he gave to Irving Brown, a US labor leader and CIA operative for strike breaking in Europe. It's pretty crazy, and Braden goes on, he, i.e. Brown, needed it to pay off his strong-arm squads in Mediterranean ports so that American supplies could be unloaded against the opposition of communist dock workers. Were the undercover payments by the CIA immoral? Surely it cannot be immoral to make sure your country's supplies intended for delivery to friends are not burned, stolen, or dumped in the sea. So Corsica, by the way, in case you don't know, this is an island next to Sardinia, which is Italian, between France and Italy in the middle of the Med. This is a rugged place. It's largely rural, very poor, kind of similar history to Sicily, right? Folks there claim that drug trafficking is one of the few ways to make a buck. It's also a perfect industry for the men of the Corsican Union, who are from this tight, often family-based clan cadre with their own culture and their own language. They're a tough bunch, and they stick to a strict criminal code. When the mafioso is spilling his guts, one US spy tells Time magazine, the Corsican is silent, refusing even to give you his name. Officials around this time, like the late 50s, they believe there are almost 40 separate Corsican clans, most of them operating in US cities, but their identity is such a close-held secret that merely speaking their name is enough to get you killed. So Corsican gangsters obviously keep very, very stum. Case in point, In the early 60s, the NYPD cops arrest a Corsican gangster named Antoine Rinieri with $250,000 in what they believe is heroin money. Rinieri refuses to give his real name or any explanation for the cash. A judge sends Rinieri to prison for 6 months for contempt of court, but Rinieri has the last laugh. When his term is up, the US deports him to France, but it's never able to prove that his cash was dirty, so he gets it back, get this, with interest. Pretty baller stuff. Of course, not all Corsican gangsters have been on the right side of history. Take our protagonist Auguste Ricord, of course, who's cozying up to the Gestapo in Paris, then fleeing to Peronist Argentina. Doesn't seem to put any of his fellow Corsicans off, though, from getting him on the newest part of the French Connection. That is to spread their influence throughout Latin America and get heroin into the United States via the ports of Santos in Brazil, or Rio de Janeiro, or Buenos Aires. Ricord, now working under his fake name, opens a restaurant near Buenos Aires' Estadio Monumental, home to one of its most famous football clubs. Danny, what's that?
Boca Juniors. That's the only one I know.
Incorrect, but I'm impressed that you that you.
What's the answer?
It's River Plate. They're up in the north.
What are the other ones besides Boca Juniors? Give me like two more.
Two more.
So I have that knowledge.
Independiente, Racing Club.
That people know.
Yeah, I don't know. I could just I should ask the guy in the studio. Which
I don't.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
That's too much thought. Yeah, we can move on.
Huracan, loads. This place, though, the one near the Estadio Monumental, is going to serve as the front for Ricord's second chapter. He hooks up with other Marseille mobsters and he gets stuck right back into the sex trade, trafficking women into Buenos Aires and then dispatching them to high-end brothels in the city itself, also in the Uruguayan capital city of Montevideo and Asuncion in Paraguay. This, of course, is a great way to win favour with politicians and police, or simply to honey trap them. From the early 1950s, Ricord also begins working for the French Connection proper, quarterbacking heroin shipments into Argentina for the Corsican Union, and then sending them on to the US. But it's Ricord's increasing pull towards Asuncion that I want to focus on today. Now, I just spent the best part of a week in the city, and I can tell you firsthand, you want to disappear from the world? Go to Asuncion. In fact, that should basically be its tourist. So come to Asuncion, run away from your problems. I mean, literally the only other English-speaking guy I met was a self-confessed alcoholic conspiracy theorist from Austin, Texas. And and there were all the Germans knocking about there too. Incredibly strange place. Downtown Asuncion, the Spanish colonial center. I mean, it might have looked pretty one day, but it's fallen into complete disrepair. It's like almost steampunkish. Smoke blasted, covered in weeds, piles of unpicked trash. Anybody there seems to be coming in or going out. Nobody seems to be there unless they're drinking or eating vast slabs of pounded chicken schnitzel, which is one of the local delicacies that I ate far too much. On weekends, it feels like the city's human inhabitants have been scooped up and thrown out like the flesh of a rotten kiwi.
Jesus, man, settle down.
I know, I'm trying to do my board.
Like the flesh of a rotted kiwi.
Yeah. Please write comments if you liked that part and didn't like Danny's interjection. Anyway.
I like it. It's a little over the top. I'm just saying. I like it. I think it's great. I think you're great.
Thank you. I love it.
Let's have a good time.
This is a low place, right? It's around a swampy bend of the Paraguay River that marks much of the border with Argentina, and it's low. It's wet, quaggy, full of flies, mosquitoes, and it is always, and I mean like breath-robbingly hot. Come to the Ciudad Vieja on a Sunday afternoon, and you will see more cats than people.
How's the nightlife?
I'm gonna conservatively say it is 5 out of 10. Which is a shame. Anyway, yeah, I'll end my little Anthony Bourdain moment. Here's a better version of that, right? It's by the British filmmaker Alan Wicker. I guess for younger listeners, he's like the proto-Theroux. And even Wicker, I strongly suggest you watch his stuff. It's all of it is on YouTube. It's outrageous. He's like slick-haired, suited and booted Brit, going around the world just tutting at stuff. There's another episode from the same series where he visits Haiti to interview Papa Doc Duvalier. Actually, let's hear this bit because it's amazing. This little nugget is right, like literally the next moment after he said how poor and destitute. Can't say anything these days, can you? Anyway, back to Monsieur Ricord, who doesn't even rock up in central Asuncion. He opens a pizza joint called Paris-Nice in a sleepy suburb miles from downtown that is right on the banks of the Paraguay River and therefore also on the Argentine border. It's very useful if you're, orchestrating the shipments of industrial quantities of heroin for the Corsican Union. Ricord doesn't spend all his time in Asuncion in the 50s and 60s. He darts between there and Buenos Aires. In BA, he can bring together members of the Corsican underworld at his restaurant by the stadium. But in Asuncion, he can operate almost entirely off-grid. And throughout the 1960s, heroin shipments through Paraguay explode. And the reason why is the country itself. So let me just tell you the story of what might be the world's most bananas bonkers country. Right, here we go. Bit of history for you. Paraguay declares independence from Spain in 1813, but doesn't become a full-blown nation until 1842. This strange kind of country, not a country state, will actually prove quite fitting because little Paraguay, which is around the size of California, but sandwiched between Brazil, Argentina, and Bolivia, it spends most of the next century and a half not really existing as a nation in the sense that we might understand it. For one, it's geographically split in half between the southern swampy lowlands that I mentioned, Asuncion sitting in, and this vast scrubby forest in the north, which spills into the neighboring states called the Chaco. And the Chaco is largely populated by the indigenous Guarani people and their language, which is also called Guarani, which is spoken alongside Spanish throughout the nation, like it still is today. Like most people are bilingual. But all kinds of bizarre foreign settlers have come to Paraguay since the 1800s, and they still live there today. Friedrich Nietzsche's sister, for example, set up a German, openly Nazi town called Nueva Germania. But Paraguay also has a Nueva Londres, a Nueva Italia, and a Neuland colony. This is really weird. It's home to Platt-Deutsch-speaking Russian Mennonite families who fled the Soviet Union.
Just a whole bunch of weirdo whites setting up shop.
Yeah, it's like, it's the bucket of whites. It's weird. Even by the time Auguste Ricord sets up his drug smuggling pizza parlor, Paraguay has never known democracy. Its early years are dominated by a collection of military strongmen who are, by any measure, complete buffoons.
You know, it's interesting. There was a pizza connection after the French Connection in the States where a lot of mafias used pizza to, it was like I think to move heroin,
Is that in the movie as well? Don't they track some guy in the Italian mafia in that movie where he's like going around? I think it's like a sandwich store, like a hero. I don't know. I can't remember it now. I think it's like a sandwich store in Brooklyn that the guy uses to launder cash and take the gear out. I need to rewatch it. Should we just watch that as part of this great idea?
You know, we were talking about doing, because we've kind of trailed off on the Patreon. So let us know if you guys want this. Doing like not like a rewatch thing, but just like watching mafia movies and things like that, and just like, you know, shooting the shit about them. Me, you, and even Dale, our producer. If people are interested in that, let us know. I think we're going to start off watching the first episode of the Turkish remake of The Sopranos.
Yeah.
But if people actually would want to listen to that, let us know, because we'll do it.
Yeah, we'll do anything. I mean, give me $100 and I will literally do anything. Anyway, back to the show. So I just drifted off there and thought, leader number one, right, of Paraguay, we've got Jose Rodriguez de Francia, who gives himself the title. This is a bit, you know, modest. El Supremo, aka the supreme and perpetual dictator of Paraguay. He lasts 26 years. And then we have guys lasting 32 days, 19 days, 31 days, 3 years, then nearly 19 years, before we get to Francisco Solano Lopez, El Excelentissimo. That's great, isn't it? Who in 1864 basically commits national suicide. I don't think anyone has done something this dumb before, by declaring war on Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay at the exact same time. Like mad lad stuff.
Dude, El Excelentissimo, I can't even say it, is just, that kind of rules. And then just declaring war on the massive countries next to you for, I assume, no reason. I mean, it's kind of hilarious.
It's pretty hilarious. In some ways.
I guess.
Yeah.
The consequences, I'm sure, are not hilarious.
Yeah. This War of the Triple Alliance, as it's called, it ends 6 years later when Lopez is killed in battle. And by then, this is nuts, Paraguay's population has gone from 525,000 to 220,000, with just 28,000 men surviving this like utter clown show. I think they drag in Uruguay just for a laugh. They don't even border Uruguay. I don't know what Uruguay is doing. Anyway, Lopez, by the way, he becomes a national hero.
Yeah, I guess not that hilarious. Wait, is that all? Did people flee, or did they lose 300,000 people in that war?
I think that's killed and displaced, but the army numbers, I don't have it to hand, but like I think it's like one of the biggest per capita losses of any army ever. Like almost everyone dies. And incredibly, by 1932, by which time Paraguay, by the way, has got through another 33 leaders, it's up for a second brain-dead scrap, this one with Bolivia over the Chaco, which people are saying at the time is rich in oil. Spoiler alert, it's not. This time around, incredibly, Paraguay wins the war, losing almost another 100,000 people in the process. They must have billions of babies. It still doesn't give the place an appetite for democracy, though. And by 1954, when a half Bavarian Chaco War veteran named Alfredo Stroessner comes to power, in a coup, naturally, Paraguay has churned through presidents at the rate of one every 23 months in its short history. That is Champions League level. That is better than anything in Central Africa. It's impressive. Basically, Paraguay's surrounded geography and constant anxiety over its borders means that the military has always played an outside role, but soldiers do not effective city planners make. And by the time Stroessner, head of the Colorado Party, cements his rule by purging, torturing, and doing all that other good stuff you'd expect from a Latin American despot with gold tassels and epaulets, Paraguay has under 100 miles of paved road. Even in the capital city, most people still get drinking water from peddlers on muleback, and almost nobody has a telephone. Here is an incredible detail from a New York Times piece, quote, "The general's day begins with telephone calls, and it is said that between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m., a ring on one of the 82,000 phones in a country of just over 3 million people is automatically answered, Sí, señor presidente." So good. I love those old opening paragraphs in New York Times pieces. They're so good. Paraguay does have some legitimate businesses, meat, cotton, timber, or yerba mate, the tea drink that all the mums and dads, even the foreigner, I don't know why they're LARPing as Argentines anyway. They're the ones drinking in the park by my apartment late at night. Anyway, yeah, probably some awful hipster bars in Brooklyn and Berlin have got it too.
Oh yeah, if you live in Bushwick and own a Che t-shirt, you're chugging that stuff, and you're letting everyone know that you are drinking it as well.
Yeah, it's that and Kratom and the other stuff from Fiji, that stuff that gets you high. What's that called?
No, that's
Taro.
not a hipster thing. That's the degenerate thing. But
Okay.
yerba mate is I have a tote bag from the New Yorker, and I got my mug of yerba mate. It's that sort of vibe.
Oh, I'm feeling seen. But most of Paraguay's income, though, comes from the black market. Here is Harper's Magazine in the 70s, quote, "The publicly acknowledged contraband trade is run by military men and a few privileged civilians. Most of the goods come from the United States in large transport planes crammed with cigarettes, whiskey, liqueurs, perfumes, and other expensive items that land at the Asuncion International Airport in the special contraband section. The goods are then reshipped to neighboring South American countries, either in Paraguayan Air Force planes or on Navy landing strips that cross the Paraguay and Paraná rivers. So Paraguay, by this point, is the world's largest importer of American cigarettes, smuggled illegally on a fleet of Stroessner's military planes. Remember that fact, because it's going to come up in a later show about Paraguay's current state of lawlessness. Stroessner builds a police state on the level of East Germany, for example, or Hodges, Albania. Hundreds, if not thousands of Paraguayans work part-time as so-called piraguis, or spies, snitching on friends and their own family. In fact, Paraguay has more cops per capita than Bulgaria, East Germany, or even apartheid South Africa. Laws are written down, but the country is governed by the Guarani concept of umbarete, or clout. Apologies to our many Guarani listeners for the pronunciation there. Prisoners are routinely tortured in cells so small that they cannot stand, or sent to concentration camps in the Chaco. Their torment is enabled by Stroessner's non-ending state of martial law. Unaccountability, says Paraguay's Supreme Court, is highly convenient. By the late 1960s, over a sixth of all Paraguayans live in exile. Corruption, meanwhile, is the national sport. In 1971, for example, when Brazil and Paraguay build this colossal hydroelectric dam, still going today, very powerful thing, Stroessner demands a $150 million kickback from the Brazilians. American companies rush into Paraguay when the dam is being built, eyeing up a Wild West hydroelectric boom. But, writes the NYT, quote, they suddenly found they couldn't collect their debts in a country that is to while you wait bankruptcy proceedings what Delaware is to instant incorporation papers. Justice is a 2-foot high statue of a naked woman holding a scale, dwarfed by a new Mussolini modern Supreme Court building funded by the Republic of South Africa. This is not nice South Africa, of course. This is 1970s South Africa. It continues. A play is announced, then cancelled. The costumes and sets have disappeared. A European country donates 3 trucks to Paraguay's Forest Service. They arrive in port, but don't leave the docks. Finally, after a year, the embassy understands. Customs officials must be bribed to get the gifts into the country. There's this insane moment later on in the New York Times piece where the writer stumbles on the story of 2 Paraguayans being arrested when they stumble upon a police shakedown scheme, and then they're forced to kneel naked and stare at a white painted wall for 9 hours. And if they try and move or close their eyes, they're beaten. This isn't, quote, the real hard stuff, according to the businessman, but what a perfect image of pointless totalitarianism. 2 guys staring at a blank wall, being watched by cops who can't look away from them, who are themselves being watched by some corrupt generals. And I think that is also how they make the Joe Rogan podcast. Stroessner himself embezzles like huge riches as leader, as do members of his so-called Golden Four, 3 Colorado Party ministers and Stroessner's presidential secretary, who remain fiercely loyal throughout his rule and hunt down Paraguayan leftists like big game. Stroessner rewards them with wealth beyond the imagination of regular Paraguayans, which makes them more loyal, which makes them more zealous in chasing commies, which deepens the repression, which makes them richer, and, so on and so forth. You get the picture. The state gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's just Stroessner and his little gang of 4, robbing the people and turning Paraguay into a giant slush fund. Another feature of Paraguayan Stroessnismo, as it's called, is the dictator's thirst to provide shelter for some of the world's worst people. The country had been openly pro-Nazi during the war and is only forced to join the Allied side under American pressure. But this is a thin veil, right? Josef Mengele, the SS Angel of Death, who performed gruesome medical experiments at Auschwitz, he moves to Paraguay in 1959, living freely under his own name.
So 2 things on that. 1, my grandmother was examined by Mengele at Auschwitz. It's a true story.
Wow.
And 2, the freely under his own name thing, in 1960s when Mossad grabbed Eichmann, right?
Yeah.
When they did that, this is why it's not surprising. When they did that, they were criticized by like a whole bunch of countries. The UN passed a security resolution criticizing them for grabbing Eichmann.
Yeah,
so the idea that Mengele would live under his own name isn't that surprising.
No, I mean, do you know what? Like here in BA, right next to the studio, there is a giant like portrait of Eva Peron. It's everywhere. I don't get it. Someone needs to write in and tell me what the obsession is with this moment in time. Because like, how can you? It's like actual National Socialism, as I understand it. I'm checking and see if the guys appear over his computer. But like, how can you,
buddy?
I don't get it.
Buddy.
Not tell me why they were showing Eichmann.
Podcastistan is going hard on that right now. So 1950s in Argentina, not that surprising considering in 2026 in America,
God.
you can, get a whole bump in your ratings if you go that route.
Yeah. Anyway, likewise, in addition to Josef Mengele, I should say, Heinrich Müller, who was the former chief of the Gestapo, and Ante Pavlich, head of the Stasi, this is like the Croatian fascists who run their country's Nazi puppet regime during the war, they're all rocking up in this tiny little country of Paraguay. The famous reporter Jeff Harmon visits Paraguay in search of Mengele for Harper's great piece, and he discovers folks openly Heil Hitlering in the streets. But that's not all. They said that Stroessner wants to build a, quote, city of the presidents inside Paraguay, where he hopes to offer asylum to overthrown tyrants like Idi Amin of Uganda and Central African Republic Emperor Jean Bedel Bokassa. In the 1970s, Stroessner will welcome ousted Nicaraguan dictator Anastasia Somoza. But that doesn't exactly go to plan, and Somoza is, get this, blown up by a bazooka near his Asuncion mansion just a year into life there.
Rest in peace to Somoza. He got blown up by a bazooka.
Yeah, nice. And then, of course, we get to the drugs. This is the time when Klaus Barbie's paramilitaries are hooking up the coca-producing farmers of the Bolivian Andes with narcos in the fledgling Medellin cartel. Enterprising Brazilian traffickers are moving cocaine through the jungles of the Amazon. And heroin, produced in Southeast Asian labs, moved through Asia into Marseille, is transported on to Buenos Aires before being delivered via Paraguay and elsewhere onto the United States, whose urban smack addiction is going through the roof. We've got into this a bunch of other shows. Of course, it's fueled by young men who've gotten hooked on the stuff while serving in the Quixotic War in Vietnam. Little Paraguay then becomes a vital node in this global network, helped in part by President Stroessner, who divvies it up between his favourite military generals. Literal tons of cocaine and heroin make their way into Paraguay either on land, in dusty border villages deep into the Chaco, or boats floating down the Paraguay or Paraná rivers. And increasingly, Auguste Ricord has a hand in it all. Now we're up to 1968. Argentine cops swoop on two of the perpetrators of the Banco Nación heist, and they make several massive discoveries.
That's from the cold open, the bank robbery.
That is.
For you guys who don't recall.
Side note, you know that I was messaging you guys on WhatsApp the other night when I was walking around that dodgy neighborhood? That was because I wanted to walk on exactly the street that this bank heist took place, and it is an absolute S-hole. Maybe I'll send some pictures to the Patreon or something, I don't know, but it's rough, man. The first man they apprehend, these are the Argentine cops, of course, is Lucien Sarti, a French soldier who had served in Algeria and later as a mercenary in the Congo, boasting that he killed more than 3,000 black people. Sarti is also a member of the secret army organization, the OAS, which is a far-right paramilitary group which opposes Algerian independence. The OAS robbed banks across Europe to fund its activities, which include, in 1962, an ambush that narrowly fails to assassinate French President Charles de Gaulle, the architect of France giving up its huge colony in North Africa. And this will form the basis of the amazing novel The Day of the Jackal, which I read earlier this year. It's so good. Absolute classic of the spy genre.
Yeah, I always thought it was about Carlos the Jackal, but it turns out he got the nickname the Jackal because he was found, or some of his stuff was found, and it included that book.
Yeah, it's so
Did
good.
you know that?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Did you watch that recent series with that Eddie Redmayne guy as the Jackal? That's pretty good. Like, it's pretty fixed for the book. It's not bad. It's kind of good.
No, I've seen there's a different movie that came out maybe 10 years ago about him, right? That I feel like I watched. He was like also a noted failure. Like he messed up more than he's got this reputation as this like, incredible mercenary, revolutionary assassin.
You mean the Venezuelan guy, the Jackal? Yeah. No, this is different. This is like this is the French guy that they nickname the Jackal in the book, but it's based on these
my
guys.
Mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other guy was a bit of a doofus, right?
Yeah. He just messed up constantly.
Yeah.
But he has this reputation as being like this like premier terrorist mercenary guy.
Yeah, similar to the way women think of me. Anyway, Charles de Gaulle responds to this attack in typically dry fashion. It was a long night last night. Joking that, quote, they are such bad shots. French authorities, though, are in a less cheerful mood. They sentence OAS members, including Lucien Sarti, to death by guillotine for association with the group. They did the guillotine that late. By now, though, Sarti is long gone. He's in Argentina, living freely in Buenos Aires and working alongside the French Connection to establish its new heroin routes through Latin America. This story takes a particularly strange turn in 1963 when Sarti is even thought to be the supposed second shooter of John F. Kennedy in Dallas, killing the US president from the grassy knoll, and it's part of a French Connection plot to carry out the assassination. This is a thing. I don't know. Let me know if this is like complete BS, but it forms the basis of quite a lot of stuff about the killing. But it is in Buenos Aires where Sarti continues his work for the Corsican Union and the OAS, carrying on the rampage of bank robberies and drug shipments until he's caught in the wank. We should just leave that.
Sorry, what now?
Until he's caught in the wake. He's not caught in the other one. He's caught in the wake of the Banco Nación heist. I mean, I don't know what's more embarrassing. The second man the Argentine cops sweep up in the aftermath of that robbery, the leader of the four, is Corsican mobster Francois Chiappe. Like Auguste Ricord, Chiappe makes his name in the sex trade, trafficking women from Corsica into brothels across France. During the war, Chiappe is drafted to fight against the Germans, but he's known to sympathize with the Nazi cause, and it's even said that he's an informant for the Gestapo, just like Ricord had been. But Chiappe looks nothing like his more famous gangster friend. He's huge, broad-shouldered, moustache with outsized features that earn him the nickname Thick Lips, which is kind of a good name. After the war, Chiappe joins the shock troops terrorizing unions at Marseille's docks I mentioned earlier. And then he joins the war in Algeria, getting a rep as a brutal torturer of Arab rebels. Chiappe then joins the OAS, gets involved with the attempted de Gaulle assassination, and then too flees to Buenos Aires in 1965, helping to make the Argentine capital the key entry point for French Connection heroin. In 1968, of course, he's caught after the Banco Nacion heist alongside Sarti, but incredibly, courts are unable to prove he's one of the robbers. Later that year, Chiappe's charges are dropped, and he continues living the criminal life in one of Buenos Aires' glitziest downtown neighborhoods. So now we're into late 1968. Auguste Ricord has fled Buenos Aires for Paraguay, where he ups his work in the heroin game. Francois Chiappe is a free man, and he's intensifying his drug trafficking in Argentina. The French Connection is booming, and so is heroin addiction back in the US. A study finds that over a third of all soldiers in the Vietnam War had used the drug while on duty, and a fifth had gotten addicted. In 1948, there had been under 50,000 drug addicts in the entire country. By 1971, there were 300,000. So chronic does the problem get that in 1971, Richard Nixon launches the war on drugs, unleashing a wave of law enforcement and military forces to counter narco trafficking across the world. Here is a piece of the Chilean site Interferencia. Quote, "The White House unleashed its full power on the drug networks. Tommaso Buscetta, a member of the Italian mafia in charge of the French Connection in Brazil, was arrested in Rio de Janeiro. A report from the Rio police stated that the Corsican Union had specialists in executions, air couriers, counterfeiters, experts in bribing officials, and even a beautiful decoy, the Brazilian model Helena Ferreira, who was used for very specific tasks." I'm going to go out on a limb and say these specific tasks are probably not magazine shoots. Anyway, the piece continues, quote, "By 1972, drug trafficking had become one of the most lucrative illicit businesses. The market was demanding a total of 600 million doses of cocaine and heroin into the United States and Europe at prices that increased by 50% compared to just a few years earlier. Profits were similar or greater than those of illegal gambling, an activity that in 1971 had yielded dividends exceeding $50 million for one of the mafia bosses, the Jewish American Meyer Lansky, who you did a show on, Lansky, back, a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen to that one too, guys. Just listen, just keep Spotify open and just listen to all of them over and over and over again until you go crazy. Similar to the way the current US administration is labeling drugs like fentanyl as a weapon of war, the US realizes in the early 70s that cocaine, but more importantly heroin, is a public health disaster. And it goes after the French Connection hard. American officials realize how deeply the Corsican Union is wound into the French establishment when it arrests a former agent of the French CIA for trying to smuggle $12 million worth of heroin into Newark, New Jersey. And he admits they'd been importing the drug with the help of his superiors in the agency. Later in 1972, Francois Chiappe's luck runs out when Buenos Aires cops arrest him again, this time for attempting to smuggle 46 kilos of heroin on a plane from BA to the US. Officials stateside request Chiappe's extradition to face charges there, but the following year Chiappe walks out of prison, protected at the highest level of Argentine politics. And he'll live out his days in a retirement home in the city of Cordoba, dying at the princely age of 88 in 2009. No such life awaits Lucien Sarti. He too escapes prison in Argentina and flees first to Brazil, then to the United States, and then finally to Mexico City. There he lives in luxury in the upscale suburb of Polanco and continues trafficking French Connection heroin. But on April 27, 1972, Sarti is walking in the neighborhood when he realizes he's being followed. When the man moves close, Sarti turns and draws his pistol. But the other man is a commander in the Mexican intelligence, and he's a better shot. Sarti falls to the floor, dead at the age of 41. US officials make a series of huge heroin busts that blow a hole wide open in the French Connection. And it deals a decisive blow when Turkey, one of the key locations for opium production, agrees under pressure from the White House and NATO to ban the growing of poppies altogether. The noose, too, is tightening around the neck of Auguste Ricord, who Paraguayans now know simply as either Monsieur André or El Viejo, the old one, or the old man. Ricord is the big prize, the guy the Americans really want to get their hands on, but they'll have to prize him out of the fingers of President Stroessner. Ricord's drug trafficking is bringing vital riches to the pockets of Stroessner's cronies, and his dictatorship is so tin-pot by the end of the 60s that more of its income comes from narco-trafficking than any other market. In other words, Stroessner knows that he needs narcos like Ricord to stay put in Paraguay if he's going to avoid being overthrown and quite possibly being shot or tossed off a balcony somewhere. That goal becomes a bit tougher in 1970, however, when a plane carrying 100 kilos of smack crashes in Miami. One of the pilots works for Taxi Aero Guarani, a firm owned by Colorado Party bigwig and Stroessner favorite General Andres Rodriguez. This guy takes a $500 per month salary officially, but he also owns currency exchange outlets, a copper wire company, several farming plots, and Paraguay's largest brewery. US authorities now think they've got the leverage to make Stroessner hand over Ricord, but the dictator still refuses. In July 1972, the Americans are getting seriously irate. They claim that Ricord is responsible for half of all the heroin brought into their country. Here is Secretary of State Bill Rogers in a letter to President Nixon, quote, "The Paraguayan government has not acceded increasing pressures by the United States to deny permanently the use of its territory as a transshipment point for narcotics, chiefly heroin, destined for the United States. I believe the next logical step is a personal appeal from you to President Stroessner. At best, your appeal will forcibly drive home to him that his coveted relationship with the United States is now in danger, thus prompting him, the country's undisputed arbiter, to be cooperative. At worst, he will ignore your appeal so that we may have to apply more pressure on Paraguay." Stroessner does ignore Nixon. So, that September, Nixon goes hard. He threatens to cut off $5 million in aid. 18 months of American arm twisting finally bears fruit. Stroessner relents, and Auguste Ricord, still slim, his puffy sideburns sweeping to a now bald head, age 62, his skin leathery from years in the Paraguayan sun, arrives at the courthouse of New York's Southern District and stands in the dock to face trial for his heroin misdeeds.
You know, they really should make a dark comedy about the Southern District, just from all the people that have passed. Terrorists to war criminals, drug traffickers, narcos. It's just wild. I think it was just, Tekashi 6ix9ine in there with Maduro, and they broke down for a minute. I mean, because like the amount of material that you could do with that. I mean, there's obviously real shows about it, right? But like a dark comedy, I feel like would do wonders.
Tekashi 6ix9ine and then Maduro doing like the chorus in one of his John Legend, like John Legend. That would be even better. John Lennon sessions.
I don't think they ever teamed up for a duet.
John Legend, Tekashi 6ix9ine, and Nicolas Maduro. Wow.
Yeah.
Like the Traveling Wilburys. I mean, isn't the like prosecution rate at the Southern District like 99% or something crazy? Like almost.
I mean, the feds is always. Yeah, the feds, I don't know what the Southern District's one is, but the feds are something like 85%, 90%, winning.
Yeah. Take the plea, man. That's what you got to do.
Take the plea. Yeah. Take the plea.
One jailed smuggler says he's bought $100,000 in drug money from New York City to Asuncion, and he'd seen the box of cash handed personally to Ricord. That is a pretty good witness statement for the prosecution. Media start talking not only of the French Connection, which by now has been made infamous by the release of the blockbuster movie starring Gene Hackman, but of the, quote, Stroessner Connection. Most Americans probably still can't place Paraguay on a map at this point, but they all know about its role in the increasing heroin addiction crisis. The case ends on January 30, 1973. Writes an attending New York Times reporter, quote, Auguste Joseph Ricord, who the government calls the largest trafficker of heroin ever brought to trial in the United States, received a maximum 20-year prison sentence in federal court yesterday for conspiracy to smuggle narcotics. Ricord, a 62-year-old Argentine citizen of Corsican extraction, had been found guilty at a jury trial last month. The small, bald restaurateur, known as Monsieur André, had been accused of being the mastermind of a many-tentacled ring operating from his Paris-Nice motel restaurant on the outskirts of Asuncion, Paraguay. The presiding US attorney says that Ricord has imported 1 ton of heroin into the States during his time in Paraguay. A nice round figure that, judging by our previous shows, is probably partly made up. In addition, the attorney claims Ricord had changed around $400,000 into Paraguayan guaranis at just one of the Asuncion exchange shops he used, probably one of those owned by General Rodriguez, which is worth over $3.1 million in today's money. That's one change of currency. And this is in a country where Nixon withholding $5 million of aid was enough to change its entire presidential policy. So, away Auguste Ricord goes to spend 2 decades behind bars, perhaps a death sentence. But this is not the end for him, or his Corsican friend Francois Chiappe, or even the dictatorship of Alfredo Stroessner. In fact, while US cops are breaking up the French Connection, the Stroessner Connection is, if anything, gathering pace. And in the coming years, it'll add to its roster Chinese nationalists, Lebanese militants, and a whole new cast of despots and crazies who carry on making Paraguay one of the most lawless places on earth. But that is for another show. We'll see you then.
Damn, Paraguay. Who knew, man? Also, I love how my episodes these days are like these 2 drunken Irish guys in Boston beat each other's brains in. And you're like, here's the global Nazi rat line to heroin conspiracy.
Yeah. I mean, the yin needs a yang.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, patreon.com/Underworld Podcast. Let us know if you want to actually listen to us go over Turkish Sopranos and other mafia movie crime show things. I don't know, man.
If you want me to take my clothes off for $100, I will do that.